everyone. Happy noon, happy Friday. I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on our Lunch and Learn series today, where our topic is on self-forgiveness. If you have heard me talk at all over the years that I've been with DHS, you have heard me say that it really doesn't matter the topic, the curriculum. It really doesn't matter how much we know, how many degrees we have in a thing. If we do not have the capacity to regulate ourselves and bring ourselves to a centered sense of peace and calm, it's really hard to institute any of those good ideas. So always and forever, we will always start any of our conversations by taking a moment to center and fully arrive. And fully arriving means what thoughts are lingering with your previous conversation, work, duties, reports. Where are your emotions? Were you aware of them at all today? What is your connection to your breath? How does the seat feel where you're sitting? Did you adjust the temperature in your room? What noises do you hear? Are you fully present? That's the question. I'm going to invite the bowl to sing, and it will ring 3 times today. So in that time, I invite you to just fully engage in how that seat feels, what the temperature feels like, how your body is feeling. And if you have any tension anywhere, perhaps you want to give it permission to leave for the next hour. However and whatever it feels like to fully arrive, please take care of yourself and do that. So if you feel comfortable to close your eyes, please do that. If not, go ahead and lower your gaze or just find a soft focus with your eyes. And I invite you to breathe in a way that allows your stomach to relax as you inhale and deflate as you exhale. Welcome. Please allow this final breath to be exhaled fully, smoothly, completely, and deeply. And when you're ready, please open your eyes and find a face or a name on the screen. And just with an open sense of curiosity, just engage with what you see on the screen, knowing that you're here with a bunch of other people who found it worthy to take time in the middle of the day and talk about self-forgiveness. So just kind of check into who that is. I mean, that's pretty cool in the middle of a workday. Yeah. And thank you for having your cameras on. For those of you who can, I like seeing your faces. I invite you to put in the chat any questions that you have already arising around self-forgiveness, if you have questions already. Today, what I'm really interested in is the distinction between self-forgiveness and letting ourselves off the hook for bad behavior. What's the difference? Do you know the difference within you? It's so easy for me to play tricks with myself and go, I'm forgiven. But really what I'm wanting to do is go, I'm justified in being and acting the way that I behaved and acted that I might not be so proud of, but I'm not going to say that aloud because I feel justified. The way that I make the distinction without going into any PowerPoints, which I'm going to pull up, is to vet it against what am I thinking? How am I feeling? What are the emotions? Where are they sitting? And then what am I doing or not doing? So if I'm letting myself off the hook, I might have cussed somebody out. And if I'm thinking, I just yelled at that person, see that noise that I just made? Because I know that there is a value or the way that I see myself that I have just contradicted. And it is true that I like to walk around thinking that I'm a pretty kind person. I'm pretty clear. I'm pretty loving. For God's sakes, I teach mindful forgiveness and things called attitudinal healing. I'm a pretty decent human being, and yet here I am yelling and cussing and saying, well, see, they're a jerk. They're a racist. They're fill in the blank, whatever word that I might use to justify my poor behavior. Do you feel the difference in you already? Letting myself off the hook for poor behavior versus what is self-forgiveness? So if a question comes up for you already, I invite you to type them in, and either we'll get to it today or we'll get to it next month, which is our final session for these Lunch and Learn series. All right, before I do that, I am going to highlight myself. So those of you who like to watch the video, or there are some folks who like to watch the video afterwards, it will be up on the Practice Center's YouTube channel. All the previous ones are up there as well. So if you are interested, or some of this topic we don't cover in depth, it's because we've covered it at another time. We've gone through all of the mindful forgiveness steps during our time here, during the Lunch and Learn series. So we started off with the idea of it's really important to be heard in your grievances. The things that were done to you that made you feel bad or hurt, or somebody didn't protect you or violated you physically, emotionally, spiritually, those stories need to be heard. So please know that this topic is coming way at the end, after you've gotten a chance to tell your story, really be heard, grieve perhaps, get in touch with your personal sense of power, understand this world of stress reduction and both and. Know that we have some unenforceable rules as we go out into the world that might get us into trouble. Only after excavating some of those steps, this conversation feels a little bit more robust and more manageable to me. So please know that self-forgiveness is a part of a process that I talk about that has several steps, and all of those can be found on the YouTube channel. So today, our focus specifically is self-forgiveness and this thing called positive intention. And then if we do have some resentments built up against ourselves or this world, then the antidote would be real self-care. So what does that look like? But none of that gets covered until we do this thing called welcome yourself into your personal space, into the moment, check in, whatever that means, whatever ritual you might have created for yourself. It really doesn't matter that it's a chime or a Tibetan bowl or that it's just a breath. It's whatever you find to be meaningful and calming. For some people, chimes and bowls are not soothing. For me, it's soothing. So that's the choice that I make here. But for you, if not, then know that silence or a breath or some other symbol or a signal for you to just take that moment and mark that time is important, to welcome yourself into that space, whatever that space is. And today it happens to be this topic. So I'm breaking this down into a couple of little headers. So I'm already addressing the difference between forgiveness and letting ourselves off the hook. Everything that I talk about, I say some of this stuff might really make sense and feel really good. Some of it you might be like, I don't know. You are your best barometer of whether this works or not. So the guide always is, if I share a story and I say, oh, it really felt good to me, the guidance here is notice what you think, notice how you feel about it, and then notice what are you doing or not doing, and are those things in alignment? It's about the alignment of those three things that's important, not how I am doing it. Does this feel connected? Does your head thinking, your heart feel connected? We're going to be clarifying the positive intention and the implementation of what real self-care looks like. I deserve to suffer because. Now, if I asked you to fill in that blank, it would be kind of odd. Like, why do you deserve to suffer? And that's a weird question to ask. But I know that when I'm quiet, I do notice that I give myself many, many, many reasons to suffer. I deserve to suffer because I didn't parent the way that I thought I would parent. I didn't parent the way that I wish I had. I did not show up in the relationships in my life the way that I wish I had. I did not take care of myself in the way that a person who really loves themselves take care of themselves for many, many years. Like, I've let myself and others around me down in countless ways. And so sometimes I go, no wonder. You deserve to. A little disclaimer here. Please know that I am not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. A lot of what we end up talking about and doing feels therapeutic for a lot of us, but this is not therapy. There's lots of different ways that we can head down the road of healing. And sometimes working one-on-one with a therapist or a counselor is really helpful. And some of what I do is almost like we all should have permission to go out and seek the support that we need. The work that we end up doing at the practice center is a lot of peer support stuff, saying, you know, there's a lot of power that individual, regular old humans, a lot of support, a lot of power that we have to really extraordinarily impact the ability for the folks around us to heal and get on that journey. So that's kind of the school that I'm coming from. I'm also certified through Fred Luskin and the Stanford Forgiveness Project around forgiveness work. Worked with Dr. Tao Lei around mindfulness work, and then Jerry Jampolsky et al. Around attitudinal healing. So what I like to think that I do is take those lessons and the research that those folks have done, because research is really important, apply it to the way that I'm living my life and seeing if it works. And then trying to translate some of that by sharing with you the stories of my life to see if you can maybe see yourself in it or make some of those connections, and then see if you want to practice those. Because it's only through what do you feel, what are you doing or not doing to help you feel better around the way that we're living that really will be the catalyst. So please know that this is not prescriptive, but I am going to tell you a story. And if you've been with me before, you have heard some stories that are pretty heavy. I've told you about violent relationships that I've been in. I've told you about the sadness that I hold because I couldn't believe that I would put myself in those kinds of situations. And then as a result of that, all of the berating and the attacks on myself. A lot of time talking about how stupid I was and no wonder I deserved a life of violence and aloneness. I've told you those stories in this space before, but today I want to tell you the time that I got all dressed up in a wedding dress. I had a disco ball hanging up because I was like, I really like disco balls. You know what? I can actually buy my own disco ball and hang in my carport. Why not? And so I did. I bought a disco ball. I hung up like all this gauzy stuff. People were flying in from all over. I had just found my biological mother and my biological brother. They had all agreed to come to this wedding of mine. I had 3 children by 2 men. I was 38 years old. And finally, I was not going to be that old spinster anymore. Because even in 2020, whatever, gosh, there's a lot of pressure to not be a single mom. Boy, there's a lot of pressure that I felt. I don't exactly know where it came from, but I felt it from all over to legitimize my family and get your ass married. Nobody said that. Nobody told me this, but I knew that this is one of the things that I needed to do. So I did all the things, and I was heading for this wedding. And we had developed a little ceremony where we like had personalized bracelets made for my kids. And then he would put it on my kids as a symbol that we were going to just be all this big, happy family. Those of you who have been here, planned for a wedding, do you know what that feels like? Do you remember the excitement? My excitement was around the to-dos, getting the people there, doing the thing, checking it off the list. And as I sat there, getting ready to walk down the aisle, a couple of things happened. My biological mother, who I found, and I thought, oh man, my whole life is going to change. Everything's going to be better. Decided that she didn't like me very much and left. My brother, my older brother, who I've been searching for since I was 5 years old, just didn't show up, didn't call. And here I am getting ready to walk down this aisle. And my son, my oldest son, is like, I'll walk you down the aisle, Mom. So I was like, okay, I can do this. There's a lot of external things happening. But as I'm walking down the aisle, you guys, I know for a fact that I did not love this person. I had no, I don't know why, but my feet wouldn't stop. I had planned too much. It was too far down the road. People were already there. The music was already playing. My sister, who sings jazz music in Minneapolis, she had flown in. And you know what song she was going to sing? The cliche song. I don't know if you had it at your wedding, more power to you, because I too, at last, you know, I had that song queued up. You guys, I was there heading down this aisle, knowing dang well that I should not be walking down the aisle, knowing dang well that inside it was like, no, I don't. And yet my mouth said I do. We did hold the thing. We danced to that wretched song. We did it. Is it a surprise to anybody that I sit here as a single woman now? Yes, this wedding ended up in a divorce, less than 10 years, divorce. I hear a lot of stories in our mindful forgiveness groups, these circles where we do a 6-week program around healing. A lot about ex-partners, a lot about divorce. It's no wonder. And I'm like, yep, I got one of those too. I was not very successful in this relationship. I said yes when I shouldn't have. I was miserable. I had other things going on, but I started drinking even more again, started eating even more again. We started fighting even more again. And then he started saying way more and more and more until divorce, however that happens. So I once again showed my kids how to fail. Once again, I already had a whole list of ways that I was beating myself up, but here was a new one. Yay, I had a new thing that I could say I failed at, and now my kids will never know how to love. I failed once again. I'm worthless. It added to that story. I was stupid before, but now I'm even more stupid. I was worthless before, but now I'm even more worthless. I was unlovable before, but I was even more unlovable. These self-attacks, these things that I told myself, the things that I held on to, that only resulted in more and more poor behavior. Those are the things that I needed to let go of. When I talk about self-forgiveness, it's about that. A marriage that didn't work out. Saying yes when I wanted to say no. Those moments when I know that I betrayed myself. I betrayed myself. That's what I want to let go of. So then here I come, years down the line, find out that there's this forgiveness training. Okay, let me go. I was going to go for all the, obvious things. I'm holding on to a lot of resentment because orphanage, mother, she left in the middle of my wedding. She sucks. Please tell me why she sucks and why I'm right in having all this anger. Forgiveness. That's what I went into it for. So we get to this section on self-forgiveness. And it says things like, okay, according to research, there are some 4 basic areas where we can really beat ourselves up around. These are the 4 areas where most of us, most people find it difficult to forgive ourselves. So I was like, oh, okay, most people, that's me too, okay. So most people find it difficult when they have failed at a significant life task. A significant life task. Now, there's some room for interpretation there, but they tend to be like having a successful marriage, being a good son or a daughter, being a good parent. Okay, I'm like, oh God, I see all the ways that I failed there. Check, 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 check. God, I suck. Okay. And so I started just saying, well, no wonder I deserve to suffer. That's not the title of this card. The title was like, these are the 4 areas that, according to research, most people find it really difficult to forgive themselves. And I was just like, these are the reasons why I don't deserve to be happy. This is the reason why I don't deserve to be at peace. I've definitely hurt other people because of my actions. I yell, I cuss, I ghost. That's the term. We didn't call it back then, but I would just dig out. In fact, I packed up my 3 kids, 4-story house, sold everything, and moved onto the Big Island where I knew nobody because most of my relationships sucked. I was like, see ya. I barely even said that. I just packed up and left. That's just kind of how I do things. So I know that there are countless ways that I've hurt others. No wonder I deserve to suffer. I've hurt myself by engaging self-destructive behaviors. I got to the point where I'd gotten so big that it hurt to walk up the stairs. I was literally killing my knees and my lower back. I couldn't lay flat to sleep anymore because I had so much acid reflux because my body just couldn't handle all this weight that I had put on. If those things didn't work, then lots of weed. That'll take you away. How many other addictions? TV, for sure. Before the interwebs were a thing, and then endless scrolling, for sure. How many different ways did I try to take myself out of the moment in order to not feel pain? How many ways did I hurt myself? Oh, countless ways. So no wonder I deserve to suffer. That's how I kept reading this card. I didn't do something that I thought was important for me to do, like, gosh, yeah, finishing school, maintaining a college fund. What? My kids were getting up there in age. By this time, 1 had already left the house, 2 were in high school. I was like, college fund. I was just like, oh God. Taking care of aging parents. I already told you guys, I ghosted. Like at that point, I hadn't quite severed my ties with my adopted parents, but I was pretty close. I had failed in so many ways. And then we get to when I observe that I have played a role in my grieving stories, because up until that point, my grieving stories were, it's his fault, it's her fault, it's my mother's fault, it's my brother's fault, it's Korea's fault, it's adoption agency's fault, it's all social workers' fault. It's everyone else's fault for how I couldn't get my stuff together. Everyone's fault for why I walked down the aisle and married a man that I didn't even love. Everybody else's fault. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I see where I have failed too. Well, then I suck even more. Just the compounding, the snowballing impact. Like, how do you get out of this? Because all I heard was, Joey, this is why you suck. This is why you deserve. This is why. So self-attacking thoughts, yes, check. Self-attacking words, yes, check. Sometimes I would catch myself saying it out loud. God, you suck. Sometimes it comes out in jokes. How many of you guys are self-deprecating joke makers? How many of you guys put yourself down and be like, ha ha ha, it's just a joke? Is it though? Our thoughts, our words, and then our actions. I already told you in all the ways that I was attacking my body physically. And then self-attacks destroy self. Oh, well, duh, no wonder I didn't have any self-esteem. As big as I was in my body, is how small I was in all the spaces that I went. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard. I never shared an idea. I never contributed to any kind of growth at work. I just did the bare minimum to get by so that I could get home, so that I could do more self-destructive things. So the question was, do you hear those, Joey? And I guess I didn't realize how much or how often. And then you add on to it the research around how much of our thoughts are negative and repetitive. So out of the hundreds of thousands of thoughts, depending on what research you're looking at like 60 thoughts a day, 100,000 thoughts a day. Most of them, so we're talking upwards of 80, 90%, are negative. And a lot of them are repetitive because humans were just not that creative. So I was saying the same thing again and again and again and again. And like after 10,000 times of you're stupid, Joey, no wonder you deserve a shitty life. Like, what chance do you have at creating a decent life, at a peaceful life, at a joyful life? What chance? So this question of, do you hear self-attacking thoughts? I was like, yes, I hear them. Okay, now what? And then he's all through heart-centered mindfulness. And when I'm saying this work, you guys, this is Fred Luskin. So I'm sure if you've been going to his stuff, at some point you might have heard this. If you've gone through mindful forgiveness, you've heard this language. So it's through heart-centered mindfulness practice and focusing our attention on the goodness, positive intention, it'll reduce our toxicity. I was like, okay, let me really try this. Through heart center, well, what is that? And in Fred's work, we talk a lot about positive emotional refocusing technique. In here, when I'm talking with you guys, we talk about mindfulness, being present in this moment, no matter what, with acceptance. So by really focusing on that, regulating ourselves, then we can ask the question, what personal motivations did you have that was good and noble before the divorce, Joey? So if I'm talking about my divorce, the only divorce I've had, I've only had one so far, that divorce, what was the positive intention that was good and noble before I was like, I've screwed up my life again. I blew up my life again. I blew up my children's life again. What was the personal motivation that was noble and good? So I'm thinking, okay, let me try to figure this out. What was my personal motivation that was noble and good? And sometimes it's helpful to see other people's personal motivations that are noble and good that drive their behavior. So when I look around and if we're watching movies, right, there's a lot of love motivation, a lot of people wanting to be together, not wanting to be lonely. Those are okay, personal motivations that people have, wanting to be helpful, wanting to protect, working with teens. I saw this come up a lot. How many times did their behavior get them into trouble? So I break up a fight. What the heck are you doing? You know, you can't punch and hit. Now you have to get suspended or expelled. Or when I'm working within juvenile justice systems of what got you in here. Well, I went and attacked XYZ. Well, why? Why did you attack them? Depending on who they are and developmentally, a lot of teens will say, I don't know. But if you excavate a little further and you sit and listen, it's really in an effort to protect their reputation, protect their family, to protect their mother, protect their girlfriend, to protect. I saw this coming up so often. Well, that is a motivation that's noble and good. However, the behavior that followed, not so great, right? We can make that distinction. I'm like, okay, I have enough space where I can make that distinction. I can separate motivation that's good and outcomes that are not so good. So my outcome that was not so good, this divorce, what was my motivation that was noble and good? So for you, if you are doing this exercise along with me right now, try identifying right now, what motivates you? What motivations are noble and good that drives you? And it might not be the same thing all across the board, right? There are some people, if you have office meetings, I don't anymore. Those were like my least favorite things on the planet. But in the office meetings, there are a couple of different kinds of characters I noticed. There's some people who talk all the time. All the time. They're talking all the time. It doesn't matter the topic. They always have something to say. And I'm like, okay, what is their motivation? And it's really different when I say that noisy so-and-so never lets anybody talk versus that's a person who really wants to be helpful here or really wants to be heard. It's different. I can really start seeing, okay, I might be wrong, but there are some motivations that I can kind of start seeing in people. All right. So it might be important for you to go in this work at your home, like be specific to a situation. What is your motivation that's noble and good? And see if you can write that down. Okay. So I understood this part. Okay. My motivation that's noble and good. All right. Once we find that, then we've located that good part of us. And that was helpful because instead of saying, God, Joey, you suck. No wonder you deserve all these terrible things that are happening to you. Then I can start going, no, your intentions were good. Your motivation was good. It ended badly, but it was good. Right? Locating that part, seeing myself as somebody who is motivated by these positive intention does something to kind of soften up myself so that I'm not so harsh. I was a very harsh person. And that made sense to me. That idea of we cannot give that which we do not have. So if I do not have softness within me, it's really difficult to show up as a soft human being to my children or to those other people in my life. So I'm always known as the, nobody crosses me. Nobody questions me. I'm that kind of a person. That was my persona. And I didn't want to come across that way. So this idea of, it starts with you, Joey. Otherwise, it's fake. Otherwise, it's so much more work, overwhelming. To try putting on a face, smile when you don't feel like it. And spend the whole day, week, month, years, your whole lifetime like that. It's exhausting. That's why we have burnout. Yeah. Fatigue. And then we start putting things like compassion fatigue. And I'm like, oh man, if we're truly, really centered and taking care of ourselves with kindness, I don't know, is compassion fatigue a thing? Right now, where I stand right now, I say it's not a thing. It's because we're doing something wrong. Something is misaligned with what we're thinking, what we're doing, and what we're feeling. There's something misaligned. That's my personal assessment right now. And again, I'm not a therapist, you guys. All right, it's my personal sense because I know what it feels like to fake it. And sometimes we think that that's the right thing to do because that's what's expected of us at work. That's how we're seen. So I have this thought, life is hard. I have this emotion, my stomach is churning. And then what do I do with that? I pretend like it doesn't exist and I put on a smile. That mismatch creates that weight, that overwhelm. Versus I'm having a tough day. I notice that. And when somebody says, hey, how are you doing? Not so good. I mean, I'm still able to do my work, but I'm not so good. So being able to say that and then go, so if I'm not smiling today, that's what's up. That to me is where I've landed on being in line. So it doesn't mean I have to be throwing stuff all day long so that people can see that I'm having a tough day. No, it's just being honest about that. And then not having the burden of putting on that smile, okay? So I'm like, that makes sense to me. Softening up myself, but how do you do that? I felt like, ooh, when you've been practicing how to be a tough survivor for 40 some odd years, how do you do this softness thing? So already I was encountering problems instead of just taking this in. Okay, this is the point where we can really start to let go of our anger and self-loathing. I had a lot of anger and self-loathing to let go of. So I was like, okay, let me see if I can just stay focused on this positive intention and then stop there. Because it's easy to go, yeah, I'm showing up out of love. But see, every time I show up out of love, people take advantage of me and blah, blah, blah. It can really quickly turn into a negative Nancy spiral. So it's really important to identify your positive intention and then full stop. Okay, so I go back. I go back to this crossroads where I'm like, to marry or not to marry. Okay, so what was my positive intention that led me to say yes? What was my positive intention? So instead of Joey making another mistake and being another idiot, which is how I used to say it, I can go, what was my positive intention here? And the same question would go for you. Any story that you're thinking of right now, the question is, what was your positive intention that initiated that storyline? Because we are the culmination of the stories that we tell ourselves. So much of life is happening inside of our head first. So the question is, in that storyline, what was your positive intention? It's really important to identify that. But then I came to another problem. I was like, okay, I wanted to get married because I didn't want to be that Black single mother that everybody feels like they can talk about. It's all across the media about how we suck and how we're worthless. I didn't want to be that. And so maybe marrying would absolve me of that. But you see how I'm addressing the echoes of my trauma. So this is how, the layering that I think of myself in. And this is how I teach it in attitudinal healing. You guys, if this image does not work for you, please create another image that has layers that might be more meaningful to you. But this is how I see it. We're all born. And when I ask you to like, picture a baby, picture a puppy, what sound comes out of your body when I ask you to look at that baby? Most humans go, oh, yeah. Look at this puppy. You guys go, oh, look at these otters holding hands. Oh, we all make that same noise. We all make that same noise. And then I think about, man, we give so much credit to our brain, but you know, it's your heart that announced your entry onto this planet, that heart. You know, the symbol of love, the symbol of life, the place where I go, who are you? I'm Joey. I say that, I'm Joey. And I put my hand over my heart. I don't do this. I'm Joey. So the essence of who I am is this mushy thing called love. Okay. I've gotten away from that because of the stories that created a sense of danger and separation for me. My trauma stories. You guys have heard many of those in here if you've been with me over time. Adoption is a big one. Getting into an abusive relationship, definitely another one. Right now, I'm in the midst of doing my father search. I don't know who my father is. That's another one. Trauma, in the way we talk about it here in this space, is an event that occurred that separates us from a felt sense of safety, dignity, or belonging. Safety, dignity, or belonging. So a lot of my stories are about a separation from a felt sense of belonging to my mother, to my home country, to my language, to my culture. Like there was a moment in time where all that was ripped away. Now, if I had the appropriate support and the language and the guidance and the love, and I had a certain kind of personality and I had the right kind of support, perhaps those wouldn't have turned into suffering. But the reality is that I didn't have those things, or I didn't have it in the way that I needed it. So those stories came with me year after year, after decade as a form of my suffering stories. I could point to those things and say, see, this is why my life sucks. Because of that event that occurred, I can tell you that nobody loves me. Everybody throws me away. It's the way that I can ruminate. This is the way that I've chosen because I didn't have the skills and I didn't have the support. It just rattled around in my brain. And our brains are not really good at separating and compartmentalizing, categorizing, managing. It just is like this big ball of uh-oh. Like, hey, be careful. Don't let things like that happen to you. It like collects all of our suffering story into these big baskets of uh-oh. Don't let things like that happen. So I'm hyper vigilant. So then this personality that I've created is of this hyper solo, single, strong survivor person who also is super lonely and puts on this exterior of not being lonely, of having my stuff together, my crusty outer layer. This is how I like to look at it. So at that moment of deciding to marry or not marry, I didn't really feel a sense of release, because I was like, it's not just a matter of identifying my positive intention. That positive intention was based out of fear. All I wanted in a new relationship is somebody who would not beat me. My God, the opportunities for so many things to go wrong when your only requirement is, I want to be in a relationship where I don't get beaten. Yeah. I want to be in a relationship with, I have some sense of control, because I had no control in that relationship. I wanted to be in a relationship because I didn't want to be a single mom. Do you see all the don'ts and didn't and all the fear-based choices I was making? because I was making these positive intentions was because of my echoes. I had somebody ask me, we talk about intentions a lot in this work. It's important, if you want to be happy, we got to have the intention to be happy. If we want to live a peaceful life, it's important to have an intention to be peaceful. If we want to be healthy, it's important to have the intention of taking care of yourself. But that intention, where the origin point matters. And if the origin point is fear, then it's like, in law, what did they say? The fruit of the poison tree. It's like that. It's like the root is wrong. So if I asked you to wake up tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and go work out because it's important to take care of your body, we would have 72 different reactions to that probably. Because we all have different ideas of what working out is and what taking care of ourselves are, whatever. All of those variables exist, right? So if I wake up and go, I have to go work out because it's bad to be fat. Everybody tells me that, your optimum body is a six-pack. And if you want people to love you, you need to look this kind of way. That's a fear-based driven way of going and working out. It's going to alter the way that I work out. If I get up because I love mornings and after moving, I feel better, and it's because I love myself that I'm going to get up and move, then that workout is going to represent something different. So it's not about that workout. That intention matters. That road matters. So when I went through that process with this particular divorce, I didn't feel good because I was like, that choice that I was making, it's like fruit of the poison tree. I was making it based on fears. It was based on what I didn't want. So at some point before that decision, I had made a decision that the way to love, the way to belonging, the way to dignity, the way to really restore myself to wholeness, there were too many obstacles in the way. I didn't know how. My mother didn't teach me. My adopted parents didn't teach me. The society didn't support me, blah, blah, blah. All the reasons I saw a big obstacle on that path. So I chose fear. I would have never told you that that's what I was choosing at the time. But all of those no words, all of the, I don't want to be hit again. That seems logical, but it was out of fear. It was out of fear. So this path, the choice that I had made way before I made a decision to marry this particular man, I was already on a path to fear. So that positive intention, it was relieving in that I didn't compound this going, another way that Joey is stupid. I could go, yeah, I could see why not wanting to be beaten, not wanting to be controlled, not wanting to be in that situation, and to find somebody who you thought was safe, that makes sense. So I could quickly let that story go. It didn't linger very long. In fact, it really brought me to a place of grief because I put this other human being through my personal hell. He and I don't have any contact anymore. There was a time when I thought I listed all the ways he had wronged me. But now when I look at it, I just go, oh gosh, he took care of my kids and he really was there and didn't know what he was getting into. And I really just passed on the pain that I had gotten from my previous relationship. So what does it take then to move that obstacle? Because to see that obstacle, to make that decision for you based out of your need for love and that you are worthy of love, to remove that obstacle, I was going to put it in past tense, but I can tell you right now, it's not an easy task. It's a day-to-day being present and practicing the things that I want to learn and letting go of all the things that I have been practicing up to this point. So removing that obstacle, removing that boulder is not just wave a button and wave a wand. And it's not that. But it is a constant reminder that in this moment, that I want a connection to my sense of dignity. I want to belong. I want to feel a sense of connection to myself, to my stories, and to you, to my kids, to my extended family. I want to be seen and I want to be known. That takes me to a different world. I would have never walked down that aisle if I had known this about myself. I never would have walked down that aisle, subjected myself, him through that if I had known this language. But at the time, I thought not being beaten, not being controlled, not being in fear of my life was good enough. And it is, and it was. So there's this delicate balance of both and. It's important to know that we know what we know when we know it. And when we know better, we'll do better, right? Who is that? So if you guys know that quote, please put that in the chat. Who's the author? Who's the book? So that realization is what helps move that boulder. And then I can then go, okay, all of the decisions that I'm making, including, can I let some of these decisions that I made when I didn't know better, can I let those go? So that I can really walk down this path of self-love. And in turn, self-forgiveness. So that clarity is important. When it's this big pile of all your sad stories all jumbled together, God, where do you start? You start where you can. And for me, it was like, oh, looking at that marriage story, okay, no, that wasn't the origin. I was already halfway through it. That wasn't the noodle. To really find clarity so that I can work on that one thing was important. To walk back, how do I do relationships? Why do my relationships fail? To really think about that, calm that spaghetti dog in my brain down a little bit so that I can identify that one strand and pull that one strand was really powerful. So then the obstacles to self-forgiveness, I can go back and look at that from a different point of view. Okay, so if these are the areas where most of us suffer, and I definitely can see myself in that, then what does it look like to undo some of this? So language is important. So instead of berating myself for the way that I felt like I had fallen short, where I let myself down, where I let you down, where I let everybody around me down, instead of berating myself, because there's not been one proven, documented, positive result, positive path to peace and joy and real connection through beating ourselves up. And I can say that it won't work for me either. And it probably won't work for you either. So if I don't have to berate myself for this list, failing, then I decided going, okay, so what if I actually look at that list and figure out the actual stories, and I might need to work through that with a therapist, a counselor, or another mindful forgiveness group, or an attitudinal healing group. I'm going to have to plug into something to help do this. So I'm going to have to create a to-do list probably. But what if I said, I'm going to start working towards significant life tasks? So what are some significant life tasks that I know I failed at? Well, number one, the parenting thing. I told you that already. So what does that mean to be a good parent to adult children now? What does it mean to create strong connections to my sense of family, to kids who don't even live on this island anymore? Is it possible? Out of fear, I would have said, no, they've left me, I suck, and now I'm alone again, and then go right back to that same old storyline that I know. But no, if that path to love exists, then what does it take for me to create strong, connected sense of family to the kids that I have? And then the family members that I've collected along the way, what does that mean? Then instead of, I want to be in a relationship or I want to get married, then the question is, what does a successful partnership look like for me? How am I going to be seen? Because my big go-to was, I'm the strong, silent one. So I'm sitting here going, I don't think any of my past partners actually knew anything about me. And they would say things like, oh, you're so strong and independent. And I would be pissed. Inside, I would be seething. And I would be saying things like, see, you don't even know me. But I didn't even ever open up my mouth to actually share. It can't happen if I don't open up my mouth to actually share. I can't share if I don't know. So I had to actually go in first, calm my stormy storm, and figure out, Joey, who are you? What do you like? What do you enjoy? What do you like about yourself? How are you taking care of yourself? And then share that. What does a meaningful career look like? You guys, I spent so many years going, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't like that. I don't like this. That boss sucks. This person sucks. That coworker sucks. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe this is you right now. Boy, can't really come to an answer when I'm sitting here poo-pooing on everything. So the question is, what does a meaningful career really look like? And for me, somebody who's kind of a control freak, it means I have to make my own up. It means I got to do the thing that is actually having some sort of meaningful impact for my life. So actually creating a meaningful career and being willing to pay the price for that was meaningful to me. And then going back and making amends to people I've heard, oh, you guys talk about a huge serving of humble pie on the daily. Still now I'm like, oh yeah, I need to make that call. Oh yeah, I need to write that letter. Oh yeah, I need to show up differently for that person, including my own children. Even now, you know, like a couple months ago, I was sharing that I was having a tough time with one of my kids. Man, we've been just butting heads. I'm trying to implement some of these things. And yesterday's conversation, I'm like, I think I learned something. I did give myself a silent pat on the back for the way that I was showing up, because my control freakness and this like sense of ownership, because you came out of my body, still exists in me. Like I want to thank you. No, like I use this body to make you. Like I want some kudos for that, even though you're almost 30, like that kind of thing still goes on in my mind. So it's something to humble myself and go, these are whole human beings who are out there living their life. Like, what does real partnership look like? What does real family look like now? And what do you need to say I'm sorry for? Because I showed up half-cocked a lot. And then really looking at what are my self-destructive behaviors? What are your self-destructive behaviors? And more importantly, how do you want to behave in a way that looks like love to you, that feels like dignity to you, that feels like you belong to yourself? In what ways might you show up for yourself if you asked it like that? So doing the things that are important to me, I have to know what is important to me. So reframing that list that I got from the Stanford Forgiveness Project was really helpful in going, okay, now I have some clarity around what I can do, but then we're living this whole life, right? I have all of these bad habits. I've been surviving and managing pretty well. I can kind of put on a front pretty well. So from the external side, I've gotten a lot of validations for the way that I've behaved. So it was something to go, no, my boundaries around myself and how I let people have access to me and how I treat myself weren't very good. So to really identify and dismantle and reestablish actual working boundaries that I have a say in has been powerful. So these are the categories. The holistic psychologist, if you guys don't follow her, she is on both Instagram and on Facebook, and her book, How to Do the Work, Dr. LaPrea, really, really great resource. So if you're somebody who like actually likes scripts, I do not. So I skip that kind of part because I'm like, I have my own language. But if you like scripts and you want to practice there, that's an excellent resource. But this is the basic breakdown, is that I used to think boundaries, just one word, boundaries. I don't have very good boundaries. She has good boundaries. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. There are several different kinds of boundaries. I was really good around my some at certain points around my like resource boundaries. Like I always worked and took care of my kids and had some free time, and I had, so around those pretty good. Mental, emotional, spiritual, my physical boundaries, how I took care of myself, who I allowed to have access to me physically, what people could say about me physically. And as you know, just as a disenfranchised grouping of people, as a Black woman, the commodification around how people like talk about my body parts, like for a long time, I never said anything. Like I would be mad when people would access my hair and talk about, like have access to me. I would just be mad. But now I say, no, you don't have the right to talk about my butt, my lips, my hair. No, you don't get the right to talk like that. So no, thank you. And if they can insist, then I remove myself from that space. So just around things like that, I didn't know what a slippery slope I had created. Sleep, oh man, I do that really well now. But sleep, I used to scroll, fall asleep, and then get up and go, okay, wait, no, what am I doing? What? Because I hated just being with myself and my thoughts. So the type of boundaries is really important, and to recognize how rigid or closed are you around there? Are you super calcified, or are you just a loosey-goosey, anybody can have access anytime kind of person? Our goal is somewhere in the middle in a way that feels good to you, that feels right to you. So you guys can take a screenshot of the examples if you need it right here, but I suggest you read how to do the work. But first, my tendency is just to start doing. Fix that, don't do that, go over here, say I'm sorry, do that, make a list of do. It's really important to go, first and foremost, be fully present in your body, in your breath, in the now. Otherwise, it's super easy to get flung back out into that crusty outer layer and start making decisions from there. So it's center, calm, that's paramount. And then take a real assessment of where are you around these boundaries. And then depending on the one that is the most prevalent issue in my life, I might start there, but always keeping gentleness and kindness at the forefront. That's number one. We cannot berate ourselves into changing into positive or more joyful, happy people, right? We love ourselves into it. It's a fine line between letting ourselves off the hook and being really compassionate and holding ourselves up to some standards we have set for ourselves. So the question is, where are you around that? So because of Dr. Pereira's book, I created a self-care like language that works for me, and then a worksheet, because it's really important to get out of this brain that can kind of morph and change. And it's just as soon as you think you understand the point, it's like, look over here. No, this is the problem. You thought it was your mom? No, it's your dad. You thought it was adoption? No, it's your, like it has a, so writing things down and to get it to a concrete form that you can manage. So if you guys are journalers, that's excellent. A lot of research around the good, important parts, and you've heard me say that here. So in our mindful forgiveness work, we write a lot of these stories. In fact, I don't allow for most of the big shares to happen unless it's been written down first, because then we have a tendency to ruminate. That's what our brains are good for. So to really write down, okay, what are my intentions for how I take care of myself physically, emotionally, materially? How am I going to spend my time and energy this week? And what am I going to do when I have these rolling, rambling thoughts? If you think something like this will be helpful to you, they're available on the website, and I'll make it a little bit, we're trying to update it so it's easier to find. Yeah, but to do this work and actually get it onto paper where you can see and hold yourself accountable might be helpful. And then if I fail in all those ways, I stay up and don't eat well, then I still try to remember, what does connection mean to me? How do I stay connected to myself? So even if I'm failing, how do I accept myself in that moment of failure? How do I empathize with myself? How do I take responsibility? How do I see myself as equal? So nobody's better or worse than me. I'm just another human going through this human experience. How do I show up as Joey so I don't have to try to be Laura, right? And then through that, can I build a little bit more trust with myself just in this moment? And then above all else, remember that the essence of my being is love. There was a time when people would look at me as a baby and go, "Aw," and I like to remember that. And then above all else, when I've made a choice out of fear, I can always choose to stop, regulate, and make a different choice. But ultimately, life is about these two choices. Either we're going down the path of love and peace, or fear and conflict. And those can be broken down into what we intend, what we pay attention to. What sort of meaning have you given to your life? What stories are you telling yourself about your life or how you're doing things? And then what is your attitude towards those? And then what are you doing or not doing about that? So through all of that, it's really important that we can identify one thing that you might be able to maybe practice today or into the week. And maybe it's as simple as I'm just going to remember to stay in this moment and practice kindness with myself. Maybe it is I'm going to write some of this stuff down. But there is a significant difference between letting yourself off the hook for poor behavior. I can sit there and go, I can understand why I drank so much. I was escaping a lot of pain. That makes sense to me. And then when it doesn't serve me so well, then I can ask myself a different question. And those are the questions that actually lead to self-forgiveness, that actually leads to me letting go of those stories of pain, right? Versus shoving it down just a little bit further. So I encourage you to really look at your life, your role in your life, and then give yourself a, oh, it's okay. And then when you're ready, figure out what one step you can take to really take ownership and responsibility to let those stories go and not be led by them anymore. If you guys have additional questions, I'd be happy to address them at the next session. Please reach out to me through the practicecenter.org website. There's all kinds of videos on the Practice Center YouTube channel if you're interested in more of this stuff. And I will be having another 6-week group coming up in March. So March 1st, all of that will be updated on the website. And a newsletter from Mary Ashworth. If you see her name, she's one of our interns at the Practice Center. She'll be sending out the newsletter for March 1st. So if you're not on that list, please connect with us so you can see what's happening. Thank you so much for this time, and go ahead and take good care of yourself today. Aloha Friday, enjoy your weekend. Above all else, be kind and compassionate to yourselves. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next month on the 23rd.